Networking magazine, proud to be different. TaskOverflow is a business growth and operational excellence consultancy based in London. They provide a wide range of services from project management, operations, marketing, sales, and general administration support. Valuable assets to any business model. Welcome to this episode of Jibba Jabba, the vocal part of the networking magazine. Anna Bromley joins me to talk about her personal and professional journey. Anna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, Sanj. Yes, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. The very first question that comes to mind is, how was your business concept born?
Well, I think like a lot of businesses that start, it was out of my own frustration, really. So I've been working as a project manager independently for 7 or 8 years, and I just realised that I'd be able to get so much more done if I had a few extra pair of hands. And that just wasn't in my professional life, but in my personal life as well. So my main message today is really delegate to elevate, because I do truly believe that by sharing the workload, you can achieve so much more in your personal and professional life.
Yeah, something I agree with as well. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about post-COVID. I mean, there's a real need for your type of business. I think, to be fair, a lot of businesses went remote around COVID time, and businesses started to scale down. Can anyone use your service worldwide, or is it just something you do in the UK?
Well, in the future, in theory, yes, I'd love to operate a global model.
Right.
But I think initially I want to offer a high quality, high touch service for people in professional services, information technology and management consultancies. So offering business support and marketing for those sorts of people. And I think the USP that I can offer is the fact that I've been there, I've done that role, and I can handhold and walk clients through some of their own business and marketing challenges. So for the meantime, I'm keeping it closer to home, really.
Right. Okay. Well, you touched on the word client. What is the ideal profile for a typical client?
I've done quite a lot of thinking about this, actually, and I believe it would be smaller companies between 2 and 250 people, probably with a revenue of about 2.5 million to 5 million a year, and predominantly UK based for the reasons that I've just mentioned. And because of my background in project and program management, the industries I've tended to specialise in would be media, technology, advertising, digital, publishing, and more traditional sectors as well, because they might be laggards slightly in the digital marketing space. So I believe I could help them more. So that's really the typical profile, a business owner of a company like that.
Right. Well, you and I met at a London Connector networking event, and we clicked. And I think that your personality fits so well with the type of business that you run. Does personality have any bearing on productivity? I wanted to ask you that on that evening, but would you be able to answer that question today?
Yes, I think it does. I often say to people that I became a project manager because of who I was, more than something that was particularly intentional. Right. But I've always been a very structured person. Some people know my story about how I used to collect ornaments at home, and I would spend hours and hours sort of sorting them into size, shape and type. And this is quite a peculiar behaviour for some people, but this is something I've done my whole life. I've always wanted to gain control of unstructured situations. So, yes, I certainly think that it is a personality thing. I'm not saying it can't be learnt, though.
Sure. Well, what's the most challenging part of what you do and how you do it?
It's certainly figuring out what people's problems are and being able to play that back to them so that they can clearly articulate their problem and therefore engage someone else's services to help them better. I think a lot of the people I speak to, they're in a muddle and they're stressed, but they don't really know why or how to break the problem down so that it can be solved. So I think that's the biggest challenge I have to deal with day to day in my business is how can I help the client understand what their challenges are and then be that solution for them? I think that's the most difficult barrier to overcome, because otherwise people just tend to muddle through best they can, really.
And I suppose that's how they can lose money, by muddling through. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you think that task management's future lies within outsourcing?
Yes, I do. I think with the changes in the world technologically, it's a big question at the moment. You know, what is the future of AI for those in the workforce? But yes, there's a lot of manual tasks that people are doing that automation, bots can actually solve for us. So whether we are the outsourcing provider for different customers or whether we engage sort of automation to help us with our processes for our clients, then absolutely, I think that's the model that everyone needs to adopt, really, at some level.
Well, this is the part of the podcast where I bombard you with questions, if I haven't already. I would like to ask you a few that some were sent in, and some were, just generally questions aimed at helping people to identify with you, the person behind the business. You've told us a little bit about your new venture, but can you detail it in a little bit more?
Yes. So, in a nutshell, I think my niche has been the marketing project manager. So I went to university and studied business and marketing. And then a few years into my career, I made the transition into managing technology projects. So I fundamentally wanted to create a service where I can deliver marketing outcomes for people in professional services, or I can deliver projects for people that have marketing systems that need changes. So that's why I've created TaskOverflow. And I did some market research recently, which further backed up my hunch, if you like, that marketing was one of those activities that small, medium business owners spend the most time regularly engaging with,
right,
regardless of whether it's actually bringing them business value or not. And further to that, they felt that an organised diary, financial accounts, a prioritised to-do list, and happy customers were the absolute essentials for running their own business. So
right.
these sort of activities are things as a project manager or someone who works in marketing needs to get a good grasp of day to day. And so it's that structure and order that I can bring to customers' businesses, and what TaskOverflow is all about, really.
Right. What would you say is the hardest challenge that you've had to overcome so far with setting up your own business?
Well, I have had a business since 2016, but I've been an independent consultant.
Right.
So branching out into this new venture has been a bit of a leap of faith, to be honest, because it requires you to sort of throw away the old modes of thinking. And with that comes a lot of self-doubt, and it really tests your confidence and your mental attitude towards the situations you find yourself in. So definitely overcoming self-doubt. And there's this great book by Susan Jeffers, I think it is, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. So even though you're going over a cliff into new territory, you need to let go of that vine, so to speak, because you will eventually land on your feet if you have enough guidance and you do know what you're talking about. So that's one thing that I've
had. That's good advice, because so many people don't really know, haven't really investigated it, and for fear they don't sort of take that leap of faith that you said you did.
Yes, it for sure is the hardest part so far, is letting go of the known and then walking into the unknown. But I think for me, the known got so painful that actually the unknown didn't become as scary anymore because I was curious and I wanted to investigate that. But
Right.
but at the same time, another challenge I've had to come to terms with is being realistic. So Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is a company. So judging myself by my old standards of my old ways of working, it isn't going to work for me anymore because the sort of like business model's totally changed. So being realistic and not losing hope and faith in yourself are, I think, the things for me that have to be there every single day to keep going, because it's not easier, but it's definitely for me more fulfilling.
It's so important to keep realistic goals. I think, from a personal aspect, I think being realistic and managing your expectations is sort of like part of the battle, really.
Yeah.
So let me ask you how you've changed the most over the last year.
I've got very clear about what it is I want to get out of my life. I think that's fundamentally what's driving this change of approach, and a desire to get back to my creativity, because I think as human beings, we are on this earth to create, and people do that in many different forms. My particular outlet at this moment in time is business.
Right.
But I was somewhat, numbed to my own creativity and my desire to take massive action in different directions that I wasn't doing before in my sort of more traditional corporate life. So I think I've changed because I've got that clarity of vision now. I've done a lot of introspecting, and I'm very clear that of my values and the type of people I want to work with, and the type of life I want to create, basically.
Because it sounds as if you've grown personally and professionally. You have this sort of, this thought process that people just grow professionally, but I think you've grown as a person too, from what you've told me.
Yeah, definitely. It's like they work hand in hand, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, well, what values are important to you when you think about the kind of business you want to build?
This is a great question because it's something I've thought a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult when you're starting a business, right? Because there's lots of conflicting pressures at play. But the one absolute non-negotiable was for me integrity, because I really saw in my experience that without that, you fundamentally don't have anything. Like trust and integrity makes the world go round. And that is absolutely a core tenet of being in business for me. And there's a couple of other things. So being really, really service oriented is something that I grew up around. So my parents had a farm shop and a sort of garden centre, and I've been in that family business my whole life. And my dad can be quite a difficult person to deal with, but when it comes to customers, the customer is always right. And that's sort of something I've taken into my professional career as well. So being extremely service oriented is super important.
That's really nice that you were on the other side of the till, so to speak. Yeah. And you've got a sort of double perspective, which is really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got to ask you this question, and it's to do with skills. What type of skills do you need to own, manage, and run your own business?
Well, you can't not be a self-starter because you're the person that's steering the ship. So if you struggle with defining your own path and plans and next steps and tasks, it's going to be quite difficult, because you do have mentors, of course, and people that can guide you, but fundamentally you're driving your own mission. So being a self-starter is absolutely critical, and it's not just a throwaway thing. Like, you genuinely do need to be a self-starter, otherwise nothing will happen. And I'm sure you can.
Definitely. I can definitely relate to that. Yeah, you've got to have that motivation to succeed, otherwise it's just not going to work. Yeah. Who's had the most influence in your life?
Well, I have to speak about my nan here, who bless her, died a few years ago now, but she was my moral compass in my life, and she was the security blanket that was always there for me. And she was that positive, supportive, encouraging, inspiring, intelligent light. And I am so much the richer for having her in my life. I sometimes say to people that she's literally one of the smartest people I ever met. So we would watch University Challenge sometimes, and she would answer so many of those questions. And if anyone's watched that program, those questions are phenomenally difficult. But she was an avid reader. Like, she would get like 10 books out from the library every week. And while she didn't go to university, she was, because she was, of the age where working class women didn't really go to university, but she ended up becoming a secretary for a professor at the University College London. And she just indulged herself in politics and history and economics and everything.
Had a lot of perspectives between the garden centre, your father, your nan. Really, it's a lot of perspectives. So what about how you feel about the business landscape right now? I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty, globally with the cost of living and that sort of thing. And I know some people are scaling back and some people are scaling forward. How do you feel personally about the business landscape right now?
Well, if I hung my coat on the changes that happen politically, economically, technologically, I would never get out of the house, because at the moment it just feels like a constant sliding sort of circus. Everything is changing. So, obviously the Conservatives have had a very bumpy ride, and we have Labour that's potentially going to get into power next year. That's going to really upset things, potentially in a good and bad way, depending on what way you're looking at it from. The economy has been so tough, and like I come and start a new venture at a time when it has been really difficult. And in a way, because I am a millennial, I don't know any different. Like 2008, since then, it's sort of not been great, has it? And that's the sort of years that I've come into my prime, if you like. So Again,
some people would say it's genius. There's so it depends on the perspective, really. But yeah, have there been any books that have changed your life? Anything that you sound very knowledgeable about the sort of books that you read, and you keep quoting these lovely things that you've read. So specifically, have there been any books that have changed your life the most?
Yeah, certainly. I am an avid reader, and there's so many, but there's probably 3 that I would draw people's attention to that have been quite transformational for me personally and professionally. Wow. So the book On Becoming a Person by Carl Rogers, like the great psychotherapist, that book fundamentally taught me to be authentic. And if you're not yourself, then the world is missing out, basically, because there is only one of you. Yeah. So if you're angry, be angry. If you're sad, be sad. If you're happy, be happy. Like, that's what I took away from the book. And that's sort of what I'm bringing into my personal and my professional life as well. I want to be surrounded by authentic people, and I want to be authentic myself. So that's one dimension. The second dimension is about the ability to write. And I learned that from a book by Steven Pinker. And he wrote a book called A Sense of Style. And I know that ChatGPT is coming about, and it's becoming easier and easier to just like reel off loads of text and things like that. But for me, what I learned there was the importance of grammatical structure, of language, of the choice of words, of logic, of reasoning. And it's really improved the quality of my communication. And I think the quality of your communication is a result of the quality of your thinking. And then that in turn improves the quality of your life. Yeah. So it's so.
And I definitely agree with that, because the AI content can often be without any empathetic value. And I think that, that when you remove that, it's just text. So I can sympathize with what you're saying. Yeah.
And just to say the last one, and this is most relevant from a business perspective, but this is a new book I've come across that's really up-leveled my thinking and structure around starting a new company. And it's called Traction, and it's an entrepreneurial operating system. And it's basically a workbook that you go through and you define all of the key components of your business so that you have a strong proposition. So I would encourage anyone who is thinking about starting a business or has already started a business to read a book like that and to take the steps required, because it's going to pay dividends in the end. So yeah, probably those three.
Anna, listen, I've got to thank you again for joining us and sharing your experiences, which I'm sure that people will resonate with the audience. If you would like to know more about how Anna can help your business, I've placed a link in the podcast description box. Unfortunately, I've got to say goodbye, Anna, but thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
That's all the time we have. I hope you can join me next time. Until then, bye for now.